Thank you all, and thank you so much for being here. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here today. Something that we got to hear a bit about from Cynthia in her address is how this work doesn't come out of nowhere. We don't do this for the paycheck, she says. We don't do this simply because we got a random call one day. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you got to where you are right now, sitting up here, getting awards, and why you remain in the realm of sports chaplaincy. You all are incredible people. You could have done anything. So talk to us a little bit about how you got here and why you're still in it.
I guess since I have the microphone, I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you. I'm extremely honored and blessed because when we do this work, we don't do it for commendation that comes from man. You know, we do it for for the kingdom. So thank you. It really means a lot. So for me, my journey is interesting because if you hear my voice, I'm not from New England. I'm from Ohio originally, and I'm getting over a head cold, so excuse me as well. But I started off as working for probably the same ministry that you work for. And so, but really started working with athletes at Central State University, which is the HBCU in Southwest Ohio, and really enjoyed a lot about that experience, learned a lot. I mean, saw highs and lows, but then also had an opportunity with the same organization to work with professional athletes. And so we went to West Africa, we spent time in South Central LA, just all different parts of the country, even Minot, North Dakota. And so it just taught me just so much about the impact of athletes and their platforms. And at the same time, I was getting ready to go to seminary in Virginia. Met my wife, and during that time of my life, kind of took a hiatus from sport ministry when I was in seminary, and had a discipleship program for young men, so for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And when I graduated, we moved to Boston because I was a church planter, and started ministering to guys at Northeastern on their basketball team. And so Coach Cohen, who's there now, the all-time winningest coach in their history, he was in his first year, and we just moved to Boston. And so, so just spent time just volunteering, going out with guys, having conversations with them, and just trying to make Boston feel more like home. And then I was pastoring in the city, in Roxbury, JP, spending a lot of time in the community. Just serving, my family and I were serving, had a lot of college students there. And during that time, made a transition from pastoring full-time to lead the organization I lead now, the Boston Collaborative. It really helps to bring together believers from different sectors, so business, clergy, all different sectors. And that's when the Patriots reached out to me because I know some of us might have been a part of Boston Pray back in 2020, which started from a conversation from one of the former Patriots reaching out to me. And kind of strategically, we just invited other leaders from the city to be a part of a conversation, and in 8 days, we had over 1,000 Christians praying in downtown Boston. And so through that experience, that got me on the radar screen for the Patriots, and then when their former chaplain made a transition from the area, they reached out to me to see if I was interested. And initially I said, nah, I'm good, I got a lot going on. And then they reached out again and said, let's talk and all of that. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But that's kind of how I got to the point of where I am. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Kind of like Jua, I am not from here. I grew up in Oklahoma, so the Bible Belt. And I grew up in the church. I went to a church that really prioritized the Bible and just like knowing what it is that you believe and why. And so in college, I was a two-sport athlete. I ran track and played basketball. And for the first time, I kind of realized like a nuance to how people experience Jesus, going to a predominantly white school. And so God kind of like worked something out to where I ended up transferring from the school that I was at to an HBCU, Clark Atlanta University. And it was at this school where, for the first time, people had questions about my faith that I didn't have answers for. Questions like the correlation between Christianity and slavery, and just different things that I had never really like thought about because I didn't grow up in spaces like I was in. And so that kind of led me down a trail, just kind of deconstructing my faith, trying to understand what it is that I believed and why, and how my experience was just kind of like different than like many of the people that I was around. And so as I was kind of doing this grappling, God really helped me to see that there was a real need for like a safe space for people to ask questions about Christianity, not so to convert them, but just to kind of like educate them. And so I started my business, Unapologetically Prepared, in hopes to create clothing that kind of like connects the sacred and the secular. And so I did that, and then one of my friends who was agnostic, they were like, well, I was studying to go to law school, so that was like my plan. And one of my friends who's agnostic, they were just like, you're so much more passionate about Jesus than you are justice. And I'm just like, okay, like, thank you. I feel like they go hand in hand, but whatever. And they were like, you should check out going to divinity school. And I'm like, what do you know about divinity school? I don't even know about divinity school, and you don't even believe in any of this. And so I wanted to go to Harvard Law School, and so I just looked into Harvard Divinity School and found that it had so many different religions that were represented there. And I figured, as I was doing all this deconstruction, that if I could matriculate in a space where there's so many different religions and come out Christian, like a lot of my mentors advised me that would not happen, if I could do that there, I could do that anywhere in the world, because Harvard is literally the world, essentially. So many places are represented there. And so that's kind of what led me to studying more about faith in pluralistic spaces. I think being there, it really opened my eyes to see the importance of just kind of like knowing what it is that I believe in why, but then also holding space for others. And so being an athlete, I had an extra year of eligibility. And so I was like, okay, cool, like I'm gonna just go and play at Harvard and like I'm gonna be all set. And so whenever I got there, I was made aware that the Ivy League doesn't allow for any students to play. And so, or any graduate students to play. And so they were like, it was a new coaching staff that came on, and they were like, but you can also be a manager. We're going to Cancun for Thanksgiving. It's a great setup. And so I was like, you know what, I'm there. Like, I love to serve, I love basketball, why not? And so I just started as a manager and was still myself. Like, I'm very much so someone that really cares about creating safe spaces for people and not forcing my faith on them, but I am someone that's also going to talk about it. And so I was just myself there, and after my first year, I kind of learned more about chaplaincy and what it looked like to be a chaplain. I was doing internships and things like that within different communities, and I just presented the opportunity to the coach to just like let her know like what chaplaincy was. She didn't know what it was. I don't know if Harvard has ever had like a basketball chaplain before, but she was like, Shariah, I trust you, let's do it. And so I just kind of like have created the program and made it my own. It was cool whenever I first started. I found this picture of whenever I was in high school, and as a senior I would lead Bible study for our freshman girls and different players and athletes whenever I was in high school. And so I don't think that I was really looking for sports chaplaincy. 4 years ago I didn't even know what that was. But I've always just kind of like followed Jesus and have allowed my experiences to shape my viewpoints on what it looks like to do ministry expansively. And so, yeah, every opportunity, just like this one, has just kind of like fell in my lap. And so I'm really grateful. So yeah.
Well, I'm not a sports chaplain. I'm an athletic administrator, but I do see the work that I do as somewhat of a ministry. You know, I'm from North Carolina. I grew up on literally Tobacco Road because we had a farm, a tobacco farm. I grew up on a tobacco farm. My dad was a Baptist minister, and he's recently retired, and my uncle is a Baptist minister, and he's retiring at the end of next month. So that era is coming to an end. But we grew up in church, and a lot of Sunday school, a lot of Bible study was a huge part of my identity growing up. but sport was also an important part of my identity. I attended the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You know, while I was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, I think I had 6 different position coaches, 2 different head coaches, 4 different coordinators. I suffice all that to say, I knew that I did not want to get into coaching.
Smart man.
Yeah, that wasn't a life that I wanted just because of the lack of stability. But I was blessed to be able to go on a career path in terms of academic support services, where I had the opportunity to actually work with student athletes and to help people be the best version of themselves. You know, quite often I see my job as being a continuation of being in the locker room, being the older guy that people come to ask for advice and then help put them in good situations. And so I've been blessed in the places that I've been able to go to, first to Western Carolina, then to Towson University, then to the University of Maryland, and then UNC, back home to UNC Chapel Hill before coming into BC. I will say being at Boston College is a very unique experience because you're at a Jesuit Catholic institution. And I didn't know very much about Jesuits before then, because again, I'm Baptist. I didn't know any Catholics growing up from where I was, but I've been very impressed with the Jesuits and learning the Ignatian principles towards life, and it's been very helpful in terms of supporting students. You know, when I'm talking to students, I'm quite often talking about helping them identify what their purpose happens to be. But I would say, just speaking on the topic of sports chaplaincy, I've been around really good people in that space. You know, Father Jack Butler had been the chaplain for BC football for over 20 years. He's going to be our university president. And before Father Jack, or when I was at the University of North Carolina, a man named Mitch Mason. And if you're not familiar with Mitch Mason, I would encourage you to look him up. You know, Mitch has had some health issues recently, but watching Mitch at UNC during the time I was there really helped me realize just how important this role is for students, for student athletes, for coaches, because Mitch has been the glue to that program for at least the last 15 years. And so it's so much that can come from this role in terms of supporting the team and supporting the support staff and coaches as well.
Thank you so much. Part of why I was so excited to be here today is this is relatively new. The professionalization of chaplains, not just, I mean, I love Father Jack, good guy, great boss, if he's listening. But part of what Cynthia and I have talked about is there's such a almost expansive abyss when you look out into this field, because it can be, on one hand, like Shariah was pointing out, a good thing because it could be all things to all people, but then we know when we don't have guardrails on, sometimes things can go amiss, shall we say, kindly. So something to pick up on, one of my favorite Jesuit terms, being Jesuit educated and a professor at BC myself, is around discernment. And how you guys, you're working in some very diverse contexts, you're working with a very diverse body of people. And so I want to come back to Jua and ask a little bit about how you are navigating the professional realm, or how you have navigated the NFL. That's a very distinct body of people. How are you able to accompany them through not just the trials and tribulations of life in sport, but also the commercialization of their careers, the spotlight on celebrity, and the types of hesitancy often in professional sports that we see to discuss the intricacies of religion within that context?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question, and I wish I had more time to flesh this one out totally. But the NFL can be a very dark place because you recognize that these are still young men. You know, average age is 24, and their career average is only 3 years. And so when it comes to the way contracts are written, so baseball, even WNBA, NBA, those are guaranteed contracts. Yeah. So if I sign my name on the line and I get a 3-year deal, the money is guaranteed. In the NFL, the only money that's guaranteed is your signing bonus. So you can sign a 3-year, $30 million deal $10 million signing bonus, and after that year, you play that 1 year, they can cut you. And so when you think about an NFL roster, you have a lot of people. So you have 53-man roster, you have the guys who are on the practice squad, which is another 16, and then you also have guys who are injured. And so the roster size, you can have probably 80 different guys. In addition to the staff outside of the coaches, so the trainers, strength coaches, scouting department. I mean, just there are a lot of people within an NFL organization, and the challenge is recognizing as a chaplain, like, how do you serve all of these people? Because it's like a church, because there are all these people, and even though they're not all believers in Christ, there are people who still reach out, who just need someone to care for them, need someone to love them, need someone to offer perspective. And so part of I felt like my responsibility was to at least have a touch point with each of those environments on a weekly basis. And so if I'm going to the scouting, so the way the NFL works is the scouting department is usually tucked away from the rest of the organization because they're mostly focused outside of the organization. And the challenge as well is you have departments who don't like each other. And so you find out some of those hidden landmines.
Okay.
So like when you talk about, so I served for 3 years under Bill Belichick. And if you see Bill Belichick in a press conference, his lips don't move. He's like that in real life. His lips don't move. I mean, just an interesting character, right? And then 1 year with Gerard Mayo, and the environments were very, very different because one is a guy who shows no desire to interact with anything of faith, but recognizes the impact of faith on the players on the team who had the biggest influence. And so for him, even though he didn't believe it, he knew that Matthew Slater, Devin McCourty, Guy Hunter Henry, the men who were the leaders in the locker room really wanted someone there to help them and to help others on the team, in addition to coaches who were also of the same mindset. And so that process was unique for me because in my role, I was paid to be there. Secondly, I had access to the entire organization. So go to practices, locker room, I had a locker in the stadium as well, and then also traveled on the road with them as well. And so stood on the sidelines the last year as well, because they recognized that there was a need for me to be there. And there's just a lot of stories. But recognizing, as you shared earlier, I feel like everything you shared in your introductory talk was reflective of what this experience is, right? There's a ministry of presence. Jesus came, he was in and among, and so he literally took on human flesh and dwelt among us. And I feel like in so many ways, the chaplain and the role of the chaplain is to represent Christ in the organization, but then also help the other lights that are in the organization as well to also shine. Because sometimes they flicker because of circumstances and challenges and things of that nature. And so during our time, I pastored, and I said I had more of an opportunity to open the word with players in the Patriots than I did with people in my own congregation. And so Mondays we had a Bible study. Thursday evenings we had a couple study that my wife and I led, and that was hosted at one of the players' homes. Friday I would go to practice and spend time with them, and then Saturdays we would have chapel. And so that was only for players who were playing on that Sunday. But 4 times a year, this was unique of any team in the NFL, they allowed us to have a church service. So where they could invite family members and girlfriends, wives, out-of-town folks. I would bring in a worship team, and either I would preach or invite someone else to come in and preach. And it gave them an opportunity to worship together as families. And it was unique in the experience in the NFL because no other team did anything like that. So when it comes to it, to get back to your question, it's really trying to provide presence, to really think about, how you care and love in an environment where, like a lot of the guys, they are struggling, with their own identity. Am I more than a football player? Struggling with, am I gonna be on the team, for the next week? Like, I don't know if I'm gonna get on the team. But then thirdly, really trying to figure out just life as a whole, because there's a lot being thrown at them at the same time.
Thank you so much for that. I want to actually pass to Cynthia because I want you to tap back into, she just told me on the ride over here, she had to officially retire as a sports trainer. I didn't know that was something you had to do. But I want you to tap back in to your old self, now retired. And think a little bit about what Jua offered from the chaplain perspective, working with departments that would have been like yours. How, from your experience, did you find more helpful models for integrating that holistic care? You're obviously in that role working on the body, and I'm sure in those different contexts had different access levels to spiritual care or a person with the title chaplain. So do you have any reflections on what really worked in that relationship and how, and of course you can tell a bad story if you'd like, but I'm more of a strengths-based gal. Tell us a little bit about what from that professional setting you found hopeful. You obviously are an interdisciplinary human and not every sports trainer is going to be, but how might we start cultivating those relationships, not just by our individuals here on the panel, but as a field, right? If we're going to be doing sports ministry and chaplaincy as a professionalized field, what are the best practices for engaging the healthcare providers and other people in the network?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think what was helpful for me was working with people of faith within college athletics. So knowing that my colleagues, whatever faith it might be, whether they were Christian or Jewish or Muslim, they were open about it and they weren't afraid to express that. And that helped to create an environment within the training room that if we're talking about something and the athlete might overhear it, they might ask questions. Oh, what did you mean when you say this? Or you have to go to this place of worship on this day at this time, and maybe you have to wear something, attire, and it just opened up a safe space to ask questions. So from that experience as a young athletic trainer, whenever I would work in a different school or university, that's what I brought to that space, was the same model that I had. For me, I wish there had been more spiritual care for people working in athletics. So the only care that was really available was through some of these Christian sports ministries.
Okay.
And you pretty much had to make your way to them. They didn't come to you as the athletic trainer or the coach or the athletic director. Like I said before, I experienced students coming to me with their problems with, death and drug and alcohol addiction and, unplanned pregnancy. So now I'm carrying this on as well with my own personal problems, right? My own issues of life. And not having someone to express that, because as an athletic trainer, I miss church on Sunday because I'm on the road or it's a competition.
Sure.
So I'm not going to Bible study, I'm not going to Sunday worship because I'm on the road, I'm in the training room, I'm taping ankles, I'm making the ice bags, I'm evaluating the injuries. So I really missed out on that spiritual care that I needed. But I try to create that space in a way that, like Jill was saying, like, church became the space that you made it inside of the four walls of the church.
Yeah, Shariah, I'd love if you'd pick up on that a little bit, because Cynthia just mentioned, right, another nuance here is doing this in an interreligious space, which, shout out Harvard, and also for you in particular, working in women's sports, so we're also bringing intersectionality in, right? So we're not just talking across defined religious boundaries, we're talking about those defined boundaries we put and embody within our own selves, right? And I'd love if you could lift up a little bit of how you've approached some of those deeply difficult challenges that are so deeply embedded in our identity, and specifically with women's athletes, are not given the same type of funding, the same type of respect, and the same type of even just attention. And so that's another factor that